Welcome to the Authentic Self Revolution. I'm Carly, your guide on this journey to genuine living and the real wealth of freedom and fulfillment. In a world that just loves to tell us who we should be, we're here to remember who we truly are. We're here for the questioners, the misfits, and anyone who's ever felt there must be more to life than following the script. Together, we'll explore what it means to revolutionize your life by living it on your terms. Each week, we peel back the layers of shoulds and musts and dive into practical ways to live more authentically. If you're listening only and want to see my face, you can head over to my YouTube channel, Owning Authenticity, where you'll find this podcast along with a treasure trove of other content aimed at uncovering who you truly are. Your authentic self is waiting, so let's dive in. In today's episode, the never-ending story of authenticity, we are taking a look at how our journey of authenticity is never really over. And we're going to look at why that may feel kind of like, come on, are you kidding me? I've done so much work. When's it going to be enough? Newsflash. You're already always enough, okay? Becoming our authentic self is never about getting it right or being perfect or becoming worthy, all right? We are already worthy. We are already as worthy as we will ever be. There's nothing we can do that will make us less worthy. There's nothing we have ever done that has made us less worthy. There's also nothing we can do to become more worthy. So this journey of authenticity is not a journey of becoming whole or worthy. You already are those things. Okay? And so if it ever feels like, when is the healing gonna be enough? I would encourage you to remember back to that concept of you're already whole. You're already enough. The journey of authenticity is about amplifying the joy and satisfaction and freedom and fulfillment that you have in your life on a daily basis, right? So that's the goal. And so when we say the never-ending story of authenticity, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about there is no top end to how good you can feel. Okay, authenticity is not black and white. I'm either being inauthentic or I'm being authentic. I'm being a little bit more authentic than I was at this time last year. I'm being a lot more authentic than I was at this time 5 years ago. And the me of 1 year from now, she will hopefully have a lot of things figured out that I personally don't have figured out right now. She'll have a level of freedom and fulfillment that I personally don't have access to right now. If every day or multiple times a week, we are carving out the time to turn inward, to look in the layers of things that are still waiting to be explored inside of ourselves. Okay, the journey of self-exploration, uncovering what's in there, integrating it into ourselves so that we are living more from the center of our core truth and less from our conditional programming. The joy buffet is endless. So this never-ending story of authenticity and getting excited about the fact that there's another chapter and there's another chapter and there's another chapter. That's what this episode is all about. So if you're excited, please take a second, hit the like button. Later on in this episode, I'm going to share my own story of why and how the layers are revealing themselves right on time. Okay, how the work that we do in the first chapter sets us up to even be able to take the journey in the second chapter. And the arc of the first piece of the saga, the first book of the saga, sets us up to even be able to start writing the second book of the saga. Okay, there is no rush. There is no check it off the list and get it all done, right? So I'm going to share my own personal story later on as like, it's a pretty juicy story. Okay, so stick around if you're interested in that. And I also will share a bit more information at the end of the episode about the free 5-day event that I'm hosting that's right around the corner called Authentic Self Uprising, that is aimed at giving you an actual launch pad, giving you the structure to turn inward, to dig around, see what you find that's ready to come online, and then how to actually activate that to be online so that you're living out of that newly found self, that newly found piece of self, and how to use that newly found piece of self to create even more joy in your life for yourself and for the ripple effect that you are sending out into the world, the influence that you're having on every single person you ever meet. So more info to come about the event at the end. But if you're already like, hey, I want to be there, it's free, really, I could come. Totally, you're invited. So owningauthenticity.com/uprising has the full information for the event, and you can register, claim your seat there. So we'll share more about that a little bit later. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into maybe like where the resistance comes from of like wanting to get it done. So we'll call this the myth of the final chapter. Okay, this idea that there is a finish line to your authenticity journey. And, you know, in some ways, I'll go ahead and give you that. I'll give you the fact that there's a finish line, but I don't think it's the one you're thinking. I think it's the date, it's the end date written on your tombstone. That's the finish line, okay? But if you're still alive, there's still chapters to be written. So I also am coming at this episode from a place of like, I hear often and even have these feelings sometimes myself of like, I should have figured this out already. Why am I still dealing with this? I've healed this so many times. I have done so much work on this. Like, why am I back here? Like getting a little feisty towards self for not being fully healed yet. And I also hear a lot of times of like, if I could just like figure this out, then I'd be there. Like if I could just get there, then I'd be there. And like, I want to put out there right off the bat that like, you know, there is no there. Like every time we summit, every time we hit a peak in our life, like we hit this high point in our life, that gives us a different vantage point that then we can see the next peak, that like basically every end is a beginning. Every time we finish one leg of the journey, we're standing at the starting line of the next leg of the journey. And again, it's like if that doesn't sit well with you, I'd say you're not having very much fun on your journey. You know, you're not enjoying it, because if you were having the time of your freaking life, you would never want the adventure to end, right? It's only misery that we want to end. We want to escape from the pain and heaviness and etc. And it's like, right, that is the layers of like the journey gets more and more and more fun the further we get into it. And that's another reason why this event that I'm hosting next week, it's coming at it from that angle of like, how do we make it fun? You know, like there is in healing work, there's so much shadow, there's so much pain, there's so much tears. And like there is, and there's really not a lot of ways to get around that. But it doesn't have to be like that, okay? And one of my talents is like making things fun. So I'm super excited to present it from that angle of like, there is joy in this process. And really the only joy there ever is in the journey, right? There is no there. There's no place up ahead where like we're totally happy, all is well, all the work of healing and finding ourselves and being authentic is over. Again, that's the end date on your tombstone that you're thinking of, not any point that exists like in a lived experience. And so as we think about like these few limiting beliefs, right? I've teased a couple of times that we're going to get into some like deep episodes on limiting beliefs, but like here's a few examples of things that like get in the way of your authenticity journey and could be where the resistance is coming from to this idea that your authenticity journey is a never-ending story, that like there's only ever a little bit more. The first one The first limiting belief is like this happily ever after myth that's like, I'm healed. Past tense. I'm done. I did it and it's over now. My healing journey is over now. And that is problematic because number one, like I've put out there in this episode, and like you're welcome to buy into it or not, is like if you're alive, your evolution is incomplete. Okay? Like we only pass away when our incarnation's evolution is complete. So like being alive is a good sign that you're not done yet. So what happens though is when we believe that like I'm healed, I'm done, we are blocking the next level from presenting itself. We're blocking the next wound from revealing itself. We're blocking the next piece of our authentic truth from surfacing because we believe it doesn't exist. So again, like that's problematic because the more we're shoving it down into our unconscious, the more it's having to get our attention through physical symptoms, physical pain, physical degradation of some kind because we are blocking the energy flow. The next one is the finished book illusion, which is very similar to the happily ever after. Like this belief of like, I'm already my authentic self. I already am unmasked. I'm already authentic. And it's like, it's not black and white. It's really not. It's like, you're probably a lot more authentic than you used to be. I'll give you that for sure. But like, you're telling me that there is no additional like pieces of you that could have an even more equal seat at the table. Really. I would be shocked, you know? Like I personally don't believe that that exists. I believe that there's more and there's more and there's more, and that's why a life lasts as long as it does. You know, every day is a gift of becoming and evolving into even more of who you were born to be. So again, to believe that like, I already did that. I checked that sucker off the list and she's complete. And it's like, I think that stands in the way of the greater joy that's possible, you know? And the last one is the final reveal fallacy, okay? That like, I already unmasked myself. And it's like, okay, but here's the thing, is like, that is not a one and done. Just like healing is not a one and done, right? Like unmasking self is a very multifaceted process. Like imagine a diamond that has all of these facets. Like there's the side facets, there's the top facets, there's the underneath facets, like all around. And maybe like 100, 200 facets on this single diamond, this single gemstone. Every single facet is wearing a mask. Okay? And maybe, this is where it gets really interesting, and I'll tease my story that I'm going to tell a little bit later. It has to do with my sexuality. Maybe there are some of these facets that have an outer mask, and when you take that one off, there's the underneath mask. And when you take that one off, there's the really underneath mask. And when you take that one off, there's the super underneath mask. Okay, so like the stack of masks on some of these facets is deep. All right, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is and why it's actually a really good thing and keeps life interesting. Okay, but this idea of unmasking myself and that like, oh, I did that. I took my mask off. I don't wear a mask. And it's like, Really? You're telling me there's not a single part of you that could be more accepted, that could be more seen and heard and loved? Again, like I think we get to certain stages in our journey where of course like the work starts to resemble much more like fine tuning than we're going to blow it up and start from scratch. Like, no, like your life's great and I get that. But what if it could be even better? You know? And I think like the root of all of these is it comes back to this whole like unproductive linking of healing and self-worth, and like that like once I'm healed enough, then I'll be worthy. And so this rush to get to fully healed or like fully authentic or whichever way you want to look at it, because we mistake that that's where our worthiness is, rather than like, no, dude, you're already worthy. You're already whole. And like, there's no shame in the fact that like your journey's not done yet. There's more healing work to do. There's more authenticity. There's more masks you could take off, but that's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. So like when we get that confused, admitting that there's more healing to do, you're like, but I already did that. I already healed my mother wound. I already did all my inner child work. It's like, meanwhile, like your wound is sitting over here like, hello, like, oh, you don't want to see me? Great. I'll just like give you some back pain. Great. I'll just like, give you this skin condition, this like autoimmune disease. You don't want to see me? I'll make you see me. Okay. And that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. But again, like some of us need that level of pain and discomfort in order to recognize that there is even a problem to be acknowledged. It doesn't have to be like that. Like we could be more proactive, and that's where this event, and specifically positioning it as fun, is where that's coming from. Is like, I want to make it an enjoyable experience to like week after week after week, go back in, dig up the next layer, find the gem, integrate the gem, like clean away all the debris, and keep doing that work, because there is no top end to how good you can feel. So let's talk about why the fact that we stay masked for so long is a good thing, okay? And really, when we think about like this arc of a story and how like one chapter sets up the plot twist for the next chapter, and like the whole thing kind of sets up this like big climax at the end of the book. But really, like book 1 is setting up the journey for book 2. And book 2 is setting up the journey for book 3. And books 1 through 18 are setting up the journey for book 19. So the fact that these masks stay on create plot devices. Okay. And like, there's this running plot of your life that like, imagine if like on page 1 of book 1, it gave you the answer for the end of the story, for like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages later. Like, and again, I think some of us think we would want that, but like, okay, let's say you were totally done, and then what? And then what? Like, to me, that sounds like the most boring freaking thing that you could imagine. Like, that it's just, it's just over? Like, and then I'm just supposed to stare at this wall for the rest of my life? Like, I don't think so. Like, I want to keep the adventure going. So these plot devices, it's like if we keep part of ourselves like hidden and out of sight, then that means at some point that part gets to make a reveal. Okay. And then there's like a whole new dynamic because now that part's in there. And now there's a whole new storyline because that part has like facts and a history and all of this new information to introduce into the story. That's exciting. It creates the next exciting part of the story to keep some parts hidden away until later. Okay. So this part, I think like that's one reason it's a good thing, is because it keeps the story exciting, keeps your life exciting to like keep revealing new parts as we go along. The other reason it's a good thing is because the parts that are hidden are the painful parts. Okay. It's also the parts that like every part has, and especially a hidden part, has like a painful past and potential to bring you even more pleasure in the future. But in order to get the pleasure, you have to address the pain of that part's past. So the masking device that we humans have, the ability to deny that something even exists and to keep it in our subconscious until we're ready for it. That's actually a beautiful thing. It's actually like a gift of the human experience, is that, again, like you don't have to see the full picture on page 1. Okay. Cause like literally we would go insane. It's like an overwhelming amount of pain to have to face. And like, typically that's just not an attractive prospect. So like better that we get like a little tiny dose that like we can handle that. And that unlocks a little bit of pleasure, a little bit more joy in our life. And it's like, great, going along. Chapter 1 complete. Chapter 2, introduce another little bit of pain. Okay, now we've got another little bit of pleasure online. Excellent. Complete. Chapter 3, and like just kind of dose it out a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And that lets the pain management be balanced and handled in a way where we can actually handle it. And so when you think about, especially when you have done a lot of healing, when you have gotten really deep into your saga, you're on book 16, 17, 18, 19, you've written hundreds of chapters of like your healing journey. You've unmasked hundreds of facets of your authentic self. I want you to consider for a moment the parts that are still hidden. Okay. And like the whole point of why it's hidden is because it's painful. And if you don't see it yet, that is correlated with how much pain is in that masked part. Okay. And like, think about like when you're like building muscles of any kind and processing pain as a muscle. All right. And so like the pain that's revealed early on in the story is little because you got the little muscles. Okay. But like processing that pain, figuring it out, sorting it out, integrating what's there, claiming the gifts, claiming the energy, claiming the wisdom, like it's all right there. It's the same process, whether it's this much pain or it's this much pain. Okay, so like you built your muscles through chapter 1. You built your muscles through all of book 1. You built your muscles through books 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14, 15, 16, 17. You built muscles. You've got big muscles. And there's still another chapter coming. Okay, so the whole point is that the stuff that gets revealed in book 20 was not capable of being revealed in book 1 because it would have overwhelmed you to the point of shutdown, would have put you into freeze because you didn't have the muscles to deal with it. So again, like this is why it's a good thing. It's like there's this wisdom in our body of like, you can't handle that yet, so I'm keeping it hidden. Don't worry, I got you. I'm hanging on to it, like says your body, right? And like as you get the bandwidth, as you have the capacity, as you have the muscles to deal with it, the next chapter is written. And this divine timing plays a huge part in this, where like a trigger will happen or a new relationship enters your life or something happens inside an existing relationship that triggers this new thing to surface and rise to your conscious awareness. And it's like, great, turned the page, next chapter. And like that was ready to be seen. It was ready to come online. It's there. It's like the alarm clock going off on like, it's time to process this pain. And all of that sounds like pretty bleak, but it's like, again, this is the hero's journey. Okay. And like, it's not exactly a victory if you don't slay a couple dragons along the way. Right. So like the little bit of intrigue and interest of like the triggers happening and like that next part coming online and the next part coming online, like that's how the story stays interesting. So when we think about this turning the page and the trigger and maybe even like the breaking point of like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Okay. Like sick of the current chapter. Like when you think about an actual book, all right, like imagine that you read chapter 1 of the book and then you went back to the beginning and you read chapter 1 of the book. And then you went back to the beginning and you read chapter 1 of the book. This is where most people live their lives. Okay. Like they just keep reading that same fucking chapter, like over and over and over again. And they're like happy to do it. They're like, I love this chapter. I know exactly what's going to happen. And then she said this, right? Like it's all predictable, totally comfort zone. And this is where, you know, like there's no shame in repeating a chapter, in staying inside volume 1 of your story, right? Like the comfort zone is an alluring prospect. Like I get it. Like a lot of people are averse to change, but eventually it gets boring. All right. This is where boredom is our friend. Restlessness is our friend because eventually we are bored of chapter 1 and we're like, fine, I'm going to turn the page and read chapter 2. All right, fine, I'm done with book 1. I'm going to start writing book 2. I'm going to move into the unknown. I'm going to let it surprise me. I'm going to see what's waiting there for me that like I can't predict it. There's going to be some plot twists, right? Like, but I'm bored. I'm sick of this. I've read this chapter 4,000 times. Like, I'm ready to turn the page. And that is where I'm going to tell you my story of my sexuality is one of those facets on my diamond that had like the outer mask and then the inner mask and then the super inner mask and then the under mask and then the really under mask and then the very under mask. Okay. And unmasking this has been a journey. All right. And the reasons that those masks stacked up in the first place, it's like every single wound to my sexuality, every single time I was shamed for my sexuality, every single time I had an experience that was humiliating or whatever it is, you add a mask. All right. So like when you think about why is a certain facet so deeply buried, those are the wounds. So unmasking becomes a journey of working backwards in time through your wounds. And when I think about my sexuality and how deeply masked it was, how many masks are stacked on top of it, because heaven forbid you remove the first 19, like, no, we better add a 20th one because this shit is really sensitive, really painful. Okay, so like bringing it online, one reveal at a time, all right? And like I think back to like when I was probably like 5 or 6 years old was the first time I recognized like I really am attracted to women. Okay, and I was 31 years old. So 25 years later before I ever was in a sexual relationship with a woman. And that was probably one of the bigger pieces of like revealing my sexuality. And even then, like, and we're going to talk about this at the event of like unmasking in the process of like, the first step is not to go stand in front of a big audience of people and like rip your mask off. Like that is so not a good idea. I actually spent months and months and months and months and months in this relationship with this woman before I told anybody about it. You know, and like that's not exactly entirely true, more like until I told my family about it. I had friends that accepted me for me, that like I was able to kind of talk in these safe spaces about my truth. So like I would take the mask off in front of this one friend and we would talk about this. And then eventually I had the muscles. The next chapter is like, and then I had a conversation with my mom about it, you know, like, and that's, you know, that's a hard minute. And so that was one level. And even here a few months ago, I had the audacity to fall into this final reveal trap myself, okay? And I told somebody who's like a mentor of mine, like a coach of mine, and I was like, it's just crazy because like I can't even imagine like what other layers of authenticity are waiting for. I've like done all the reveals. I've taken off all the masks. God damn it. Like, no, I have not. Okay? Because there were only the parts that were so scary and so painful that I just had kind of resigned to myself that I'm just never going to admit that out loud. I'm just going to take that to my grave. You know? Like, I'm just never going to pursue that. And here in this last week or two, and I would say that this is very much a result of the event and like the event that hasn't happened yet, but like me designing this event and like getting clear on these steps, the 5 steps that are the repeatable steps of the Neverending story. It's like the plot of like book after 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 book. It's the same 5 steps. It's the same exact process. You're just going to repeat it at deeper and deeper levels. And I got really clear on this. And in the process of getting really clear on it, I unmasked a whole nother part of my sexuality that like, I'm not even going to say it out loud on here, but like needless to say, like I am now into the direction of like, not just my sexual orientation, okay, which I would say is like pansexual at this point. I can say that out loud. That was actually a whole nother mask of like realizing like, I'm definitely not a lesbian. I'm definitely not heterosexual. And I wouldn't even call myself bisexual. It's more like pansexual, like the energy of the person. Okay, like that's really what I'm looking for. And that's really what I fall in love with and get attracted to. And also I think it's like demisexual, where like you have to have feelings for the person to like want to have sex with them. Like anyways, it's been a whole journey, okay? Mask after mask after mask after mask. And this next one is like my kinks, my fetishes, my like specific like wiring of my sexual gratification. And like, this is the part that like, again, like I spent 25 years knowing that I wanted to like have these relationships with women and like not acting on it. And I would say it's been about 20 years that I've known about these kinks, these fetishes, and have never acted on it. And at this point in my life, I'm like, okay, so let me start learning. Let me start like exploring this direction. Let me start like getting myself together, like getting my courage together. Like again, the hero's journey, like I'm standing at a peak of like feeling so awesome and courageous and confident. And then here's a whole other peak of like, could you imagine speaking this truth? Could you imagine like taking action on this? Because holy shit, talk about that rung of the ladder is out of reach. And that's something that we're going to talk about on day 5 of the event, is like authentic action and how to take action towards the truth that's been revealed, and how like when the rung of the ladder is out of reach, how do you get ready? How do you build yourself up to be able to reach it? And so that's the process that we're going to talk about on day 5 of the event. So all of this has been like plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. And it's like at the end of every book, I'm like, great, I'm done, like the end. And then it's like, oh shit. Yeah, I forgot like all of that. I just kind of put that in a box in a closet somewhere. It was like not gonna happen. And now I'm like, not necessarily like bored, but all the work I've done in all the chapters has given me the strength to even be able to begin to imagine that I would live that life. And like, if you can imagine it, you can do it. But like, sometimes things are so scary, we don't even want to picture it in our head, right? So this has been like such a fun episode. And I would love for you guys to join us at the free event, Authentic Self Uprising, that's right around the corner. Again, you can go to owningauthenticity.com/uprising to save your spot. Totally free. Bring your friends and be ready to meet the next little bit of you. Right? Be ready to take off the next little mask on whatever facet it is that's ready to reveal itself. And like, maybe you take the mask off and you don't see the facet, you see another mask. That would make a lot of sense. Like sometimes it be like that, okay? But either way, I think this is going to be a super fun event, and it's an opportunity to come together in community with other people who are sharing this same value of wanting to continue doing their work, wanting to getting to know themselves even better, wanting to be vulnerable, practice speaking their truths, practice taking up space. This event, I'm also creating a community space for, so those who have registered, you'll be getting your invite in the next couple of days. If you sign up, you'll get your invite shortly after you sign up. So all of that to say, like, this is going to be my best event ever, okay? Like, so far, right? Plot climax happening over here, very climactic week happening next week. So I would love for you to join in with us. Again, owningauthenticity.com/uprising. And you can also, invite whoever you want. Invite whoever is like your buddy to go on this adventure with you and is your safe space to be able to like share together what it is that's being revealed, what it is that's coming up. Until next time, I do hope that you are taking such good care of your beautiful self, and so will I.